I was 14 when this happened. There's a Walmart that's walking distance to my house. I used to sometimes go there to buy clothing and such before I was of driving age, since it was so close. Sometimes I'd go with my friend Emily, sometimes I just go alone. The Walmart is part of the nearby mall, but the mall kind of stinks now. Most of the good stores have closed over the years, plus I wasn't made of money when I was 14, and Walmart is cheap. One night, I walked to Walmart with my AirPods in. It's a 15-minute walk. When I put my AirPods in, I shut out everything else around me. I feel like most people with basic social awareness know that if someone's wearing headphones, it means they don't want to have to take them out to talk to you. I was minding my business in Walmart, in the girls' clothing department, when I noticed a guy next to me saying something. I couldn't hear what he was saying, but it looked like he was talking to me. I took out my AirPods, and I said, "Are you talking to me?" He said yes, he was. This shorter man with gray hair, who looked like 50, had glasses and a clean-shaven face. He smiled and said, "Sorry, I didn't see your headphones." Sure, he didn't. He said he was just telling me how his daughter buys the same exact kind of jeans I was wearing. I had no idea why he was telling me this, but I'm a very polite person to everybody. I always have been, so I chose to be kind to him by laughing and saying, "Oh, that's funny." That should have been the end of an interaction that didn't need to happen, but of course, this wouldn't be a story if it was. I was still looking through this rack of tops as the man kept trying to talk to me. He mistook my kindness for actual interest in talking to him. Clearly. He asked my age, and I said 14. His response was unsettling. He basically said, "Oh, what a great age. So mature, but still so young." He asked my name, and for some reason, I actually gave him my real name. His response to my name was, "Wow, that's my favorite name for a girl." Next up, he asked what school I went to, and around now was when I decided to start making things up. I said I'm actually not from around here, I'm just visiting my cousin. He couldn't let it go, though, and he persisted, asking where I'm from. I said I'm from out of state, keeping it vague. But then he said, "I've seen you around here before. Are you sure you're not from around here?" I looked at him and tried to think of a response, but instead, I ended up turning around and walking away from him. I was, for the first time ever, actually made very uncomfortable by a stranger. The way he said he'd seen me before made me feel as though he'd been watching me or paid attention to me in this Walmart before. I went to buy the jeans I was holding at the front of the Walmart, then I walked through the store to enter the mall. It was November or December, and they had just put up the Christmas decorations, so I wanted to walk through and see if any new stores had opened. Since my shopping in Walmart was cut short, I walked through the mall with really nothing catching my eye. I went into a Victoria's Secret, and while inside, I saw through the glass that guy from Walmart sitting on a bench in the mall outside of the Victoria's Secret. I left the store and started walking very quickly through the mall. When I turned around, I saw he was now walking behind me. I started to panic and called my mom, asking her for a ride because I was being followed by a man. I took her advice and waited in a store with multiple people inside. He came to the entrance of the store and creepily said my name in this way that he clearly didn't want a lot of people to hear him. I started to feel sick. I went to the cashier and said, "This man is following me. I don't know him." Some customers overheard and looked over, and the man clearly noticed and started walking away into the mall. The cashier, who was probably only 20 years old herself, sympathized with me. A couple even came over and said they'd wait with me until my mom got here. My mom came into the mall eventually, and I left with her, thanking the couple who waited with me. I didn't go to the mall or that Walmart alone anymore. I didn't even go back with friends for a long time either. I hope that guy got caught being a creep and has been taken off the streets. My name is Laura. I'm 20 years old, and I work at a Walmart by a small town called Jackson in Alabama. Since I don't go to school full-time, my boss would oftentimes put me on an overnight shift. Back when the store was open 24 hours a day, given that it was a supercenter, there would still be a number of employees working. My shift this one particular night was 10 p.m. to 7 a.m. I was one of only a couple employees doing stock work. There was 1 or 2 employees at registers up front. Given that our store sits in the countryside of Alabama, we didn't really get much business at these insane hours of the night. However, it was a prime restocking period. I didn't personally know the other employees working that night, but it's not like we'd run into each other in the giant store anyway. I started my night folding pants in the men's department and generally tidying up. I kept headphones in at night because usually there would be no one to tell me to take them out. A customer came to the jeans section, and at that time, it was around 11:30 p.m. So, it wasn't really that weird. People would still come in and close shop till usually around midnight. The customer came up to me and asked me if we had any more of the specific pants he found in a different waist size. I apologized and told him only whatever was on the rack. He thanked me and walked away. I made accidental eye contact with him as soon as he stood by the rack, putting the jeans back. It was kind of awkward. He walked away, and I continued with my work. Some time passed, and the store started to look like a ghost town. No one to be seen as far as the eye could see. I think it was like 1 a.m. I had made my way over to the appliances section. I was doing a lot of back and forth work with boxes from the back section, where we kept all the items that were yet to go out. I brought a wagon full of boxes to one of the aisles and started stocking the shelves. Because the shelves were empty, though, I was able to see someone through the next aisle over. And they were watching me. Well, only up until he noticed me notice him, then he looked away. But his eyes looked really familiar. I stepped closer to get a better view, and I realized it was the same customer from like 2 hours earlier. How in the world could he still be in the store without making it obvious? I took the wagon with me and passed the next aisle over just to get a look and see if the man had any items in his hands. His hands were completely empty. No way could he be shopping for 2 hours and not pick up a single thing. Something wasn't right. I quickly finished up restocking the shelf with coffee machines and other appliances, then brought the empty wagon to the back area. I chilled out in there for a while because, quite frankly, I felt like that guy might have been following or watching me longer than I realized. I played on my phone for a little while in the employee lounge. Then, when I figured it was time to get back to work, I decided I would do grocery work instead. Just to be in a different part of the store. I went into the dairy cooler and filled a bunch of crates with dairy products like milk and yogurts. This took a lot of time to do because I had to check the dates on the products and such. Over the loud sound of the giant refrigerators keeping the cooler cold, I heard the door to the dairy cooler burst open. There was conveniently a gap in the boxes sitting on one of the pallets that allowed me to peek through it to the door of the cooler, and I swear, it was that same customer. I ran to cover under one of the shelves and pushed a big box full of eggs in front of me. Didn't have to worry about making noise because the refrigerators were so loud. For anyone wondering why I decided to hide, Well, I already assumed this guy was hanging around the store watching me. Seeing him in the employees-only section, never mind that, coming into the dairy cooler, seemingly something bad was definitely about to go down. I hid behind that box with my head down for the longest time, expecting to hear the doors to the cooler open and close. Eventually, after a while of hiding and not looking, I assumed maybe he left after looking for me. I lifted my head from my arms for the first time and looked up in front of the box and screamed. He was right there, smiling at me, standing over the box. But his smile vanished as soon as I started to scream. He tried putting his hand on my lips to muffle my scream, but I didn't allow that to go any further. I pushed the box of eggs over right into him, and the eggs falling to the floor made him step back, looking down at his shoes. I ran right past him, but he didn't grab me, so I continued to run until I found another stock worker and told him to help me. The employee's name was David. I remember from his name tag. Suddenly, the man from the dairy cooler came up to the two of us and apologized, explaining that he was from corporate and was coming to make sure everything was running smoothly. He said he didn't mean to scare me and was simply checking up on me in the dairy cooler to make sure I wasn't slacking off. This David guy seemed to believe it all, but then again, he didn't seem very smart at all. I asked the man why he put his hand on my mouth, and he said he was trying to avoid making a scene. Then, shockingly, he gave me the order to finish up the appliance section, and he disappeared as he was speed walking away down the aisle. I called out, "What's your name?" and he called back, "Jerry," and just like that, he was gone. The next day, I called one of the managers and asked if there was supposed to be a visit from corporate the night before and if a creepy man named Jerry sounded familiar. My manager, Margaret, said it sounded like complete nonsense. There was no record of anyone from corporate named Jerry who was supposed to come visit, nor would anyone from corporate ever be in the store at 2 a.m. They then went ahead and checked the camera footage, and a police report was filed when they realized this was a random man, and the cameras proved this man had been stalking me between the aisles for the better part of the first few hours of my shift. I told Margaret I couldn't do night shifts anymore after that, and she understood. I still work there, but more so as a day stock person or a cashier. Walmart was never my first choice as a place to work, given the low-quality rep it has. But I applied for the job 2 years ago and took it for one reason: overnight, I wouldn't have to worry about crazy customers or anything. I just had to stock the shelves during the store's closed hours. This happened just a week or two after I started working there. I got some training from the manager for the first couple days, then I started working alone, like everyone else. The store was huge, so we had a lot of ground to cover every night. But the work itself was simple. We'd each have a long cart full of boxes to stock for each aisle, and we'd get as much done as we could before our shift was over. On Monday nights, I got to the store and clocked in at 11 p.m. I talked to the manager, then got my assigned aisles for the night and got to work. I was a pretty shy person, not great at making friends unless they talked to me first, so I always kept conversations to a minimum and focused on work, especially since I was new. As I was searching for the correct spot for one of the boxes in the aisle, a man came up behind me and tapped me on the shoulder. It startled me, but he politely asked where the bathroom was. I told him, and he walked away. I thought he was just another new employee, since they'd been hiring a lot recently. I mean, the store was closed, anyway. So, what else was I supposed to think? I carried on, finishing in the aisle and moving to the next, until the man came back. He stood at the end of the aisle I was in and did an awkward wave. He looked to be nervous or uneasy about something. I asked if he needed something. "Yeah, can you help me?" He stuttered. Sure," I said, following him. I had no idea what he needed, but thinking he was a new employee, I thought he must have made some sort of mistake and didn't want to tell the manager in fear of getting in trouble. We passed an aisle with another worker in it, and he gave me a funny look, just as I was starting to question things. The man stopped. We were at the front of the store, by the front service desk. "It's right here, if you could just reach it for me," he said, stepping aside and pointing at the other side of the counter. I walked in front of him and leaned over the counter, looking for what he was pointing at, but then I felt a sudden, dull object being pressed into my back. The man grabbed me aggressively and held me down, telling me to be quiet. I realized the object was likely the barrel of a gun, and my whole body went numb with fear. "Open it," he said in a hushed voice, referring to the cash register at the front desk. I told him I was just an overnight stalker and didn't have access to that stuff, but he didn't believe me. He got more aggressive each time he asked me. Before another employee walked by, the man yelled at him to open the register, but the employee looked just as scared as me. I told him I could call the manager to come up and open it for him, begging him not to do anything else. He agreed, and I picked up the store phone to call. But the other employee made a sudden run for it, which must have caught the man off guard. He shoved me against the counter, knocking the wind out of me, then ran across the store. I stayed there and managed to call 911. Luckily, everyone was okay, and the man actually didn't chase the other employee but just left the store instead. Everything was caught on store cameras, too, showing him hide just before closing and even got a pretty good face shot. He was later identified and arrested, where they found that he was actually using a fake gun that he'd spray painted all black. I still work at Walmart today, and I've gotten a lot closer with some of my coworkers, but I still find myself staying alert, sometimes nervous that someone else could be lurking around in the huge store without me knowing. My worst job ever was working at Walmart. I worked there only for a few months. I hated every minute of it, honestly. I didn't get along with a lot of my coworkers. The customers were crazy and weird, and I felt like a lot of people just generally were unfriendly. I was 24, and Walmart was my second job to make ends meet with my new apartment. Sometimes I'd work the register, sometimes I'd work the desk outside the fitting room, and sometimes I'd work as a general sales associate. On this day, I was a general associate, walking around the place, assisting customers, and straightening things on the shelves. I interacted with a bunch of people that day, and I still remember dealing with some of the dumbest customers I'd ever had the displeasure of interacting with. But nothing could have prepared me for who I was going to run into that day. I got a random pat on the back, and I turned around to see my ex-girlfriend Casey. She looked super happy to see me and went in for a hug. I was surprised because she didn't live anywhere near here. I asked what brought her here, and she said she heard through a mutual friend that I started working here recently. Casey and I did not leave on good terms at all. She had been harassing me for a while since I had broken up with her, and I had to end up blocking her on everything to get her to stop. She was insanely controlling throughout our relationship, and downright obsessive, bipolar, and paranoid. After I ended things with her, she wouldn't stop trying to contact me and meet up with me to talk things out, even though we had talked things out multiple times. She even left multiple voicemails crying. I take no joy in any of that. I don't say any of this to belittle her or make a joke of mental illness. She has issues, and I came to learn that. I had to tell her multiple times that her behavior was not normal. her finding out I got this job and coming to my place of work. I was not okay with. Even though I hugged her back and was cordial at first in this interaction, I eventually cut the crap and said, "Why are you here?" The fake friendliness stopped here on both sides. Her face got more serious, and she started telling me that it's really messed up that I block her out of my life like this. I told her this is the exact kind of behavior that made me block her. Showing up to my job is not normal. Then I started asking her which mutual friend told her that I worked here. She claimed that's irrelevant, and I assured her it most certainly is not irrelevant because I didn't believe that anyone told her where I work. I had broken up with Casey many months ago. She should have had no way of knowing about my new job or apartment, and I was confident none of my friends were even in contact with her anymore. I told her, "I'm seeing someone else now. I have to get back to work. Please leave and don't contact me again." She refused to leave, so I simply just started walking away to an employee's own area. She didn't follow me back there. It was at this moment I actually started considering trying to get a restraining order. After my shift was over, it had to be like 11 p.m. closing time. I left the store and went straight home. My roommate was home, his car was in the driveway. I parked next to him and went inside. I went straight to the kitchen to make myself a late dinner, as I always would after closing shifts. I microwaved some frozen meal and went to the living room to play video games for a while. This was my only time to unwind and do what I wanted. I played for maybe an hour, then went to bed. I woke up not long after falling asleep. I thought I heard something. I looked up and realized my bedroom door was open. I definitely did not do that. My roommate Paul goes to bed really early because he works early, and there's no chance he'd just get up and randomly open my door. I got up and walked out into the living room. I turned on a lamp and looked around the place. I went over to the front door, and it was unlocked. What the hell was going on? I was thinking, did Paul leave? I looked out the window and saw that his car was still there. I locked the front door, then I went to his bedroom door and tried opening it. It was locked. I knocked on the door lightly once, and he didn't respond, so he was asleep. I was genuinely confused. I went out front and looked under the pot where we kept the hidden spare key. It wasn't there. My heart was in my throat at this point. The only person in this world, besides Paul and my family, who knows that I like to hide a spare key outside is Casey. I checked at least 5 times under the pot, even checking the surrounding area on the chance that maybe it was kicked out of place or something. I went back inside the house and shut the front door. I went to the knife holder in the kitchen, and the biggest knife was missing. My phone was still in my bedroom. I had to be smart about this. I tiptoed to my bedroom door till I was close enough to grab the doorknob as fast as I could and slam it shut from the outside. I screamed as loud as I could for Paul. He erupted from his room, obviously confused, and there were suddenly bangs on the bedroom door from the other side, along with Casey's voice saying, "I'm sorry, let's talk." I held the door closed with all my might as she kept trying to pull it open. Paul called the police as I held the door. After a few minutes of this, Casey stopped trying to pull the door open, and she was hysterically crying on the other side of the door. Finally, the police arrived and came inside. I moved away from the door, and the officers made sure Casey dropped the knife before she came out. She was, of course, arrested, and I didn't even have to press charges. She was charged by the state for, I believe, burglary in the 2nd degree, and she's currently serving a pretty lengthy prison term for this. I'm honestly shocked she didn't get charged for attempted murder. It's a sick situation all around. I don't know when she'll be out. I'll have been long moved out of this place by then. My biggest regret is not catching the red flags with her early. What's one place you can go to and find the weirdest, freakiest creatures in our society? I swear, I've never been to a single Walmart where I didn't see at least one eye-catchingly strange human being. Strange does not even cut it for what I'm about to tell you. It was the Thursday before Black Friday. My Walmart was open extra late. I was in there around 11 o'clock, looking for a new laptop, and by chance, I picked up off the shelf the last one that was being promoted for a really good Black Friday deal. As I grabbed it, though, some big, revolting, dirty-looking guy comes up to me and insists he needs a laptop very badly. I nervously said, "I'm sorry, it's the last one." Then he got angry at me and started making a bit of a scene. The man clearly wasn't normal, and my heart started racing simply because I don't get put on guard in these kinds of situations a lot. As others looked on at the commotion this big guy was making, I walked away with the laptop box quickly and went straight to a line. He kept yelling at me as I walked away. It was unbelievable. Some other customers on the line even tried to laugh with me and make me feel better, saying the guy was a nut. So, I get home, my family is all asleep already. I go outside to sit in the yard by the pool and set up my new laptop. Then, the light on the side of the house turned on, the one that turns on due to movement. I went to check the side of the house to make sure no one was there. Would that thing go off once in a while? Yeah, but there's a small patch of woods right next to the house, so animals would often run on the property, triggering it. Either way, I'm kind of a big deal, so I went inside, locked the door, and finished setting up my laptop in the living room. A car alarm suddenly started going off outside. I recognized it to be my Cadillac. I looked out the window to confirm this. I ran to get my keys upstairs, then tried pressing the panic button to turn off the alarm. It didn't work from the inside, so I stepped out to the porch and clicked it off. But then I noticed a car parked in front of our house that wasn't there earlier when I got home. Any cars parked in the street on our block was suspicious enough. We live in a closed-off community, and everyone has huge driveways. I stepped down from the stoop and realized there was someone sitting in that car. I went back inside and locked the door. I went to my mom's room and told her, "I think someone outside means us harm." My mom and dad have a complicated situation, so my dad doesn't always stay with us. It would have been a different story having my dad there to tell about this. My mom came downstairs with me, noticeably worried, based on what I told her. My mom took a look through the peephole in the front door, then gasped and put her hands over her mouth. I looked through it as well and felt ready to throw up when I saw a huge man standing on the other side of the door, on our stoop. I whispered to my mom, "I think that man followed me from Walmart." Suddenly, the doorknob started to turn as the man tried opening the door. When it didn't work, he started pounding on the door. That's when my mom let out a gasp and cry, and my younger sister came out from her room, who also started to panic when becoming wise to the situation. The pounding stopped, then there was a silence for a while, other than my mom's voice on the phone with the police. A few minutes went by, my mom still on the line with 911, with police en route, and there was a loud bang and crash downstairs in the den. A window was shattered. My mom and sister both screamed and cried. I told them to run upstairs while I locked the door to the den. I waited down there, expecting an attempt at the door or a bang, but nothing. Surprisingly, I heard a police car briefly wail its siren outside my house. It was the quickest response time I'd ever heard of. I ran outside to lead them to the den where the broken glass was. There, they found the huge, dirty, crazy-looking man hiding behind one of our couches. He was arrested at once, and we pressed charges. All the while, he was screaming profanities and threats at me, not helping his case. Both cops told me the guy seemed unstable and on some kind of drugs, but told us to get a good night's rest because he wouldn't be bothering us again. So, while it may be fun to people watch at Walmart and laugh at some of the goofy things you see, realize you may also find some of the more dangerous people in our society in your local Walmart. Thanks for watching the video. Subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications to watch the latest videos.